We are going to talk to Jamal in California, and he wants to give us his point of view on being religious. Jamal, go for it.
How are you all doing?
Great, thanks.
Yeah, really good.
Good. Well, I just want to mention that I'm Muslim, and I do have a lot of atheist friends. I'm really great with them. No problem at all.
Great.
I just want to mention how my Muslim view, a Muslim view of how things came about, is far less of a fairy tale than the atheist view. So if you tell a fairly intelligent kid who is neither religious or atheist, let's just say no, they never heard of religion, and they never heard of, hey, not believing God. They're just naive, but they're into science, they're into they're moral, they're whatever, right?
Could it also be an adult who's just never encountered religion, or does it have to be a kid?
Yeah, or an adult. Somebody who's intelligent.
Okay.
Somebody who's intelligent, adult, right? If you tell them what is more likely, what is more likely,
something came from nothing.
Like,
is that where you're going?
God coming in to an angel and speaking information to an angel, and that information is then broadcasted from that angel to a man who then broadcasts information to people. They record it on a book, and the book then contains all this information, all this moral ethics.
Okay, so that's one option. Or
what was that?
You said which is more likely, so that or sorry.
Right. So I'm not done yet. Okay. So they have this book and it has all this information, and then the same guy who released this book, helped release this book, had no background knowledge, no education, can't read or write, but the information is so intelligent compared to all the other information at that time that even 1400 years later it's still relevant, and it still has no scientific errors, and even it hasn't been proven yet.
Yeah, so Jamal, we need. What's the other thing? Hang on. I know the sort of way you're going, but you said what's more likely. That's we've heard one of them is that there's a god which already existed, which then talked to an angel, which then talked to a person, which then talked to that. Or what's the other option?
Yeah, what's the other thing?
I'll finish that part really fast, okay?
I feel like we got it.
You've done a lot.
Yeah,
come on.
We understand what you're saying.
We can elaborate more in a second.
You tell somebody. Okay, so the other part is that things came out of just things came out of nothing. Like the planet, the world just came about from nothing. That the sun, even though it has to be at a it has to be.
So this is Jamal. This is basically. Hang on a sec. This is basically like you're saying. What's more likely, the story in the Quran, or something comes out of nothing? So I guess my first response would be as a fairly intelligent, not encountered religion before person, I'll be like, I still think it sounds more likely that something come out of nothing. That to me would feel like I get that seems like magic, but the other one also seems like magic, and the other one has a god and an angel and someone who can't read who wrote a book, and that seems less likely to me than just one single magic incident. However, I would point out that they aren't the only two options, because that is a false dichotomy. Because obviously, as well as the Islam story, which possibly true, maybe there's also the Christian one. So those two options, which we could say which is more likely, and obviously you believe that the Islam one and a Christian would say they believe the Christian story. But also, I don't think that astronomers and stuff would necessarily universally agree with the idea something came out of nothing. Lots would say, oh, well, we literally just don't know where the universe came from. And I know there is a debate where some people think that the universe has always existed in some form and it grows and shrinks over time. And other people think that the idea of a start of the universe isn't a sensible question, like it doesn't make sense. And there are lots of different debates to this. So if I said to someone who didn't know anything and I was like, didn't know anything about religious and start the universe, and they never really thought about it. And I said, well, here are 500 different religions, all of which claim the existence of a god, but we don't actually have any evidence for any of the gods. And then here are like 50 different hypotheses for the creation of the universe not involving a god, but we don't really have any evidence for any of them either. Or you could just say, I don't know, I don't really care. I think they'd pick that.
Yeah, same. And I feel like that's the main one. You're sitting here and you're like, oh, what if I told you that there was an angel and and God talked to the angel and then the angel told everybody about it and then they wrote a book, like blah blah blah. So okay, well, what if I told you that Zeus is as the real God and he started in heaven and he's the one that puts the lightning bolts down and that's the reason why we have lightning, and then he has a son with a human woman and that son came down to earth and performed many magical acts and things, like he was really strong and his name was Hercules. How is that any less feasible than the story that you just told me? Like, why would I choose the Muslim story over the Christian story, over the Greek myth story, over Norse gods, over the pantheon of Indian gods? Why of Hindu gods? Like, why would one make more sense than the other unless that's just the one that you were indoctrinated into when you were born onto this planet?
I actually mentioned that earlier because it's the only book.
I must have missed it.
Scientific information. Right.
Oh, scientific information. Can you explain to me the scientific information in the Quran, please?
Like, for example, it mentioned how ants could talk and make a talk and all that. And for
communicate
many years, that was never a fact. People thought it wasn't a fact. It was rubbish.
No, but I'm not so convinced that because
I don't think that people thought it was rubbish.
I am a fan of ants. And when I was a kid, I used to just sit and watch them. I agree that we knew. Hang on a sec. We knew that we didn't know that ants had like pheromones that they communicate with, and they drop down a trail, like the exact mechanism, because that's something we've only recently discovered. So if the Quran says, did you know ants lay pheromone trails and pick it up using their antennae, and they actually have like 15 different ones, and there's even a pheromone which aphids use to communicate, which can cause them to fly, and that was in the Quran. Like, oh cool, when did they find that out? Like a long time before then, early and stuff. But to say ants communicate, I mean, as a child, I remember watching them, and they go up and they do this little thing, and then they go off, and like they got to be talking. They got to be saying ant language because, I mean, they're so organized and they look like they're talking. So I think that the specificity, how specific it is what's important. If the Quran says something like the speed of light is very fast, you're like, how did it know? Well, it's like, yeah, it is very fast. But if it says it's like 9 point whatever it is times 10 to the 18, if it's got the decimal places, and then suddenly it's a bit more interesting. And I do feel like, I don't know about this claim. Maybe you could even read the bit out where it says about the ants, but I have a feeling it's going to be on the less specific, the kind of thing I noticed when I was a kid side, rather than the more specific side.
Right.
Perhaps.
Like what you can just observe by looking and watching.
There is so many facts on it. Okay, that's just.
Please give us some more.
Yeah, perhaps a different.
Here's the thing about the Quran. I don't want to bombard you guys with all this information. I could bring up so much all day, but the thing with the Quran is not scientific. Okay, but the fact that it has this information that's maybe it might not be super to the the numbers and this, but the fact that it brings up information, for example, about like salt water and fresh water not mixing, not being able to mix, and there's all this information that was
salt water and fresh water do mix. It's called brackish water.
Yeah,
it happens all the time.
Some fish can only live in brackish water.
And but there's another.
I actually don't know. Sorry to cut you off, Jamal. I actually don't know this one. What is this about salt water and fresh water not being able to mix? I don't even know what the point you're referring to is. Just from my own interest. What is this? Because I've put salt in water and mixed it. Like you can
yeah, all the time.
So what do you mean?
Like there's a passage that mentioned that there's the fresh water and seawater never mixed. I'm sorry, fresh water and seawater. So like they never mix. It's
yes,
at the end of a river, don't they mix at the end of a river when a river hits the sea?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, like visually, like okay, there's areas around the world where there's fresh water and seawater. You see them, and they're never like they're not like all of a sudden mixed. There's like this barrier. Okay?
No,
but
where are you getting that from?
Gradient. It's a gradient, and when sometimes the tide's coming in, then the gradient will move further up the river. And
there is many evidence, ladies and gentlemen. There's there's a lot of evidence that I could point out that that are so many that Islam talks about that.
Listen, I know that you think you're making a point by just saying I have all this evidence that I can point out, but you're not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I
so
feel
point
like
out the evidence.
When you said there's loads of evidence, and then your first two examples aren't the best.
Not evidence.
For example, the first one, for example, if I'm going to point out the evidence, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, it's not specific. I point out about the ants and how ants were. They were speaking, and then
you can watch ants and see that behavior. Like anyone can do that.
Like the reason I point out this specific thing is because if God is real, God knows literally everything. Like God knows all the decimal places to pi, even though it's irrational and infinite. Like this is just trivial, basic information. He created these things. So why wouldn't it be like when lots of the holy books, not just the Quran, but others, you often see these things where they talk about, they'll say, oh, it was this far or something. And it's never, why don't you get these, why is it never precise? Or really specific?
Hello?
Hello?
Let me give you another one, okay? Hello?
Okay.
Sure.
Go for another one. Third try lucky.
Yes. So if you want another one, I'll give you another one. But I know you're going to say, okay. So, for example, the idea of this.
We know what you're going to say, too.
No, I mean, I don't. I want to hear a new one. Sorry?
There's one, it says, and we have built the heaven with might, and we continue to expand it. So that's an example of the universe expanding.
Is the heavens the universe? Okay. I thought they were separate.
The heavens, yeah.
The heavens, yes, are the universe. So, like when we go to heaven, we're just going to be floating out in space, or like stars and galaxies and stuff? No. So when we go to heaven, are we going to be like sitting on clouds and like if we kill ourselves for our religion, do we get 72 virgins in the cloud land, or what does it look like?
Wow.
God knows.
Well, I'll tell you something. Let me give you all your point of view, okay? You're talking about my point of view and how, you're trying to just discuss this. But
I'm ready.
The idea of like Earth just coming about. The sun, the sun has to be an exact distance from Earth, or else we'll be either burned to death or cold and die. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I do know about this one. Actually.
How can that just get nowhere? Just answer me. How can that just come out of nowhere? That's just
It makes you uncomfortable to think that, doesn't it?
There are
right there.
Jamal, there are
fairy tale.
billions of planets in the universe. Like so many, your brain cannot comprehend it. So some of them are going to be in a stupid position and in a position where we couldn't have life. I mean, in our solar system, we have many examples of planets. Mercury is way too close to the sun to even have an atmosphere. So there are loads of planets. There's probably 1 billion planets in the same position of Mercury, and none of them are going to have life on. Like, impossible. And there are loads like as far away as Jupiter, and they're all too cold. And there are billions of those. But there are so many different possible combinations, just from random chance. There are loads of planets within, it's called the Goldilocks zone. But what's interesting about this Goldilocks zone, which is the only place in where you get liquid water and an atmosphere. There's actually loads of other special conditions about the Earth, like it needs to have a magnetic core in order to create a shield, basically, from the sun's harmful rays, which would otherwise destroy life. So there's lots of interesting stuff. But the interesting thing about the Goldilocks zone is, if you were God and you were creating this one special planet, and then for some reason creating like 10 trillion other planets for no reason at all that we're never even going to see, if you made this one special planet, to me, it would make sense to put it in the middle of the Goldilocks zone, like bang in the center, the peak point for, liquid water and life to thrive, and the temperature at which all life would do better. But that isn't where the Earth is. Like, we're in this range, but we are not exactly in the middle of it. I can't remember which side of it we're on, but I mean, you can just go and look it up. But I just feel like that's one of those things where it's just like, why wouldn't... I mean, obviously God could just pick anything, but why? Why would he pick one that's like to the edge of the perfect zone? Like, if we were shifted more towards the middle, perhaps life would thrive even more on this planet.
Don't question what God does. Question like what.
Why not?
Think about how like the idea of our everything, like our systems and ourselves, our bodies, our cells. You're saying that.
Do you think that we haven't thought about these things? Like, that's the whole point, is that we have thought about these things.
Think about how intelligent it is. Like the cells. Think about it. Do you think
it's not that good, mate?
Do you think it would just come out of nowhere? If I bring
children,
you,
yes, I do.
I bring you a phone. It's less complex. It's less complex than a human, obviously. And I tell you, you know what? It came out of nowhere. You'll be like, you're out of your mind. And you're telling me,
no, that's such a poor argument.
Billions of cells. Each cell has a freaking factory. Each cell has a factory.
The problem with this intelligent design argument is, I feel like there's only really two options here. There's there's multiple different explanations from like the sort of scientific perspective, but it's basically, did life emerge without a creator, or stupid design? Because there's not really intelligent design, because there's just so many like, if I was designing creatures to worship me because I had an ego problem and I needed that for some reason, then why would I make it so that some of them die of cancer in childhood? Or why would I make it so they can't breathe underwater? We can't fly. Like, there's so many there are other animals that are just better than us at everything. Like, eagles have better eyes. Why would I just be like, oh, I'm going to give the 80th percentile eyes to my dream creations? Like, there's so many bad... Like, an example that I don't know, it's a bit of a horrible example to bring up, but like, humans sometimes, and it's fucking horrific, rape each other, and that is horrific. God created humans to be able to do that, because he also created hyenas, which can't. They physically cannot do that. It's not an action that hyenas can do to each other because of how their genitals are constructed. So why did God make it so we can? Like that. And you say don't question God, but I think that's a valid question to ask, because it is fucking horrific. And yet, apparently, according to you, the most intelligent being of all time specifically created us to be able to do that. And to suffer from it. How is that intelligent? It's stupid design, bad design. I could design humans better than this. Deaf. I wouldn't give us I wouldn't even give us internal organs. Like, why do we need organs? I'm a magic space wizard. I'll just be like, these, they'll just
be indestructible.
They're all just like Ditto from Pokemon, and they don't need to get plastic surgery. They can just look like whatever they want.
Or they don't get sick. Why do we have sickness?
Yeah, and
Why
not
would
even
you
just
create
like
that?
if you had sickness as a punishment, even that might make if you're sadistic, that makes some kind of sense. But you're just applying sickness randomly to people, sometimes to babies, and they suffer and die,
So,
or even
okay,
like this to
can I talk now?
and not even just diseases, yeah, but also just like genetic conditions. Yeah, sorry, Jamal,
Yeah,
go ahead.
genetic. Yeah.
Okay, so here's my thing. You're saying what God created, the sufferings He created. He creates, potential people that end up having cancer. There's so much
Yeah,
harm in the world. There's so much bad in the
arbitrarily.
world. Why should we have like features we don't want? Why should we have this, right? So you're saying
Yeah.
that as your way of combating, this complexity that I see all around me, this unbelievable complexity that it's functioning out of somehow it's functioning out of nowhere. Somehow this extreme complexity, it's functioning out of nowhere. But you think that's
well, I hear
Totally
what you're
avoiding the question.
Yeah, so basically there's two arguments here.
What?
One is the like intelligent design argument, and I was saying it can't be intelligent design because it's badly designed. But I guess you're also or maybe now instead, or maybe all along, you're
Yeah.
trying to make the argument that there are other complicated things, and like I accept that smartphones were designed, but I don't accept that amoeba were designed. So why is that? That looks like a contradiction. And I guess my answer to that is, I know that phones were designed because, well, I happen to be an electronic engineer and I actually design computer chips for a living. So I know that happens because I've done it. Like, I've seen it. I've met people who have literally built these chips. I've watched videos about the entire production process. I studied it for my degree. So I know for a fact that it was designed. But if I was to like, I was I was recently in Portugal. It was amazing. Saw some amazing like rock faces and stuff. And some of them, sometimes you see this rock sort of thing and you're like, has this been created naturally? Or have humans done it? Like there was this kind of tunnel thing, and it kind of looked a bit too smooth to have happened naturally, but it also looked kind of a bit too wonky to be drilled out by a machine. So I literally didn't know if it was created by a human or by God, because I didn't have an example. I'm not a geologist. I don't know anything about rocks in Portugal, and so the only way I can really know for sure is to compare it to stuff that I do know for a fact. Like I know this cup was created because it's made of plastic because I know the process to make cups, but I don't know the process to make rock formations. So I guess that's my answer to your question.
Yeah, like I said, it's believing in God is the right way because not a God, but a God that has sent in information that has not been unproven. Like I'll give you an example for the Quran. Okay, 80% of the Quran that has been found out in terms of like scientific information, 100% of it has been correct. 100% of it has been correct. So there's only 20% left. So if 100% of it, 100% of 80% has been correct, is good.
100% of 80%.
20%,
okay.
There's reason to believe it's going to be good too, because it just that information hasn't been to the level that science, all that.
Just because you keep repeating it doesn't make it any more true.
Come about. I didn't repeat this part. How's that repeating?
If me and Sinn wrote a book and it was literally jammed full of scientific facts, and then we also claimed that we were God at the end, would that mean that because you saw, 99% of ours was facts, and then 1% at the end was like, Katy and Sinn are the gods and have created this pretty cool hell that you might actually want to go to, then would you be like, well, the first 99 lines were correct, so...
Well, look at it this way. If the information that you provided, for example, to the people, it resonates in people's hearts and makes people think, you know what, this is unbelievable true. This is true. This is
because it makes me feel good. I like the way this makes me feel, so it must be true.
Good.
Why is it good? Why? How is it objectively good? When in the Quran it says that like you can have child brides, like that's okay, and it says that that women cannot like show the tops of their heads, and they can't have rights that other human beings get to have. Like, so that is all correct. You agree with all of that? You think women should cover their faces and bodies?
It's reason behind that. Women, it's saying cover the head. It's for modesty. They know men.
Yes,
Right.
We must be modest because men cannot control themselves. If you just exist as a woman, a man cannot control himself, so he will assault you and rape you. So it's your job to keep covered, because you want to be modest, because that's what's important. If you want to get into Muslim heaven, don't ever show a shoulder or an ankle. I do not accept that. Like, I reject that. And I don't see any good reason why any person would choose to believe that particular fairy tale that keeps, that oppresses an entire half of the human population. Like, how is that okay? How do you justify that?
Okay, then you're
sorry,
crazy. Then
you can't.
100,000. You're calling 100,000 Americans who convert to Islam crazy. There's a lot of Americans, a lot of
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
It's
I didn't even say they were. Hold on, I didn't say they were crazy. I said I think that there are issues with their beliefs.
Yeah,
if you want to choose your own oppression, though, go for it.
This has been a good discussion, Jamal. I know we've had a little bit of a spicy banter, but I think it's been good. So I feel like we could talk for ages, and it'd be great if you could call back on another show. Like I would more than happy talk to you. I know that some of our hosts have been saying in the chat just now they'd love to talk to you. Please do call back. I'm sorry we're gonna have to let you go now just because we've got more callers to fit in, but thank you very much for the discussion. Also, sorry if I feel like I've cut you off there without redemption sin. I know that, like, when someone's always like,
no, you're good.
"Oh, actually, I'm going to justify why women are second-class citizens," and I'm like,
yes.
"Ugh," and then someone's like, "Right, let's move on." I'm like, "No, I want to shout at them."